What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WrestleRant, where I, Graham Jason Matthews, break down all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network as well as on the Impact Plus streaming service. Today we're talking ECW Hardcore Heaven 1994, another one of those ECW super shows that was lost until recently, until they added them to the network a few months ago. I've had people ask me, where can I find these shows? Well, if you look hard enough, even if you just type up Hardcore Heaven 1994, you can find it that way. The search option now on the network is a lot better than it used to be. There's still a lot of flaws with the new service, but with the new update to the service. But the search bar is a lot better than it was before. But if you go to the pay-per-view section, scroll down to ECW, on that row of shows from ECW, you'll see ECW pay-per-views, WWE ECW, Hardcore TV, ECW Hardcore TV. And then you'll also see ECW super shows. That'll bring you to all the shows they did, I believe from 94 through 96, if I'm not mistaken, if not later as well. I'm going to watch all of these before I watch the rest of the ECW actual pay-per-views. But this was Hardcore Heaven 1994. I know it's been a while since I reviewed an ECW pay-per-view, or any pay-per-view for that matter, here on WrestleRant, but just a very busy schedule the last couple months. But anyway, we kicked off the show, The Rock and Rebel taking on Hack Myers in a pretty throwaway match. It went all of maybe 4 or 5 minutes. So Rebel was going for a back suplex on Hack Myers, and Hack Myers just fell on top of him, so Hack Myers won that way. It was a pretty lame finish for an otherwise lame match. I guess there's really no other way to put it. Not the greatest opening match. The subsequent match really wasn't that much better. That saw Tommy Cairo take on Chad Austin. Again, very forgettable, short-lived match. Was over in about 4 or 5 minutes. For the win, Austin did cradle Cairo and use the ropes for leverage as a heel way to win the match. And that was that. Really nothing out of the ordinary about that match whatsoever. For the ECW Television Championship, we had Mikey Whipwreck taking on Jason. I think Whipwreck defended the championship via disqualification on the last show that I watched, if not another show that I watched recently from ECW. He did put the championship on the line here and did lose it to Jason, of all people, who was like the bodyguard for someone else. Jason was a very forgettable person, a very forgettable figure in ECW's history. And he won here in a no disqualification match to become the all-new ECW Television Champion. That was after the Pitbulls had interfered and helped him win, so he didn't win on his own. And Mikey came close to retaining before the Pitbulls interfered, helped Jason pick up the victory, and as a result, become the ECW Television Champion. It was actually a pretty good match. The crowd was way into Mikey Whipwreck. Now, I know he was over at this point. I just didn't know he was over as he was. He was super over with this audience. But as a result, out come Taz, the Tazmaniac, as they were calling him at that point, and Jimmy Superfly Snuka to make the save. They took on the Pitbulls in an impromptu match. Match was literally over within 40 seconds. Taz hit Pitbull number 2 with a suplex, and then Superfly followed that up with a Superfly splash for the victory. So the match was, again, all of 40 seconds, probably exactly what it needed to be honest with you. I was not longing for a longer match involving Superfly Snuka in 1994, so short and sweet was exactly what this thing needed to be. We then had 911 taking on Mr. Hughes. This match sucked. They tried, I give them that. Even for a 3-minute match, this was pretty terrible. 911 had Paulie Dangerously, Paul Heyman in his corner, as well as Mr. Hughes having Shane Douglas in his corner, and Angel. I have no idea who that was. 911 won with his signature chokeslam, and then he chokeslammed Angel afterward as well, so that was just great. And then Paul Heyman threw out some misogynistic comment about, what was it? What was the comment? Shane Douglas, or no, not him. I forgot who it was. Oh, someone so-and-so, come out and pick up your fucking dead fish of a wife, or whatever it was. Very sexist comments that were not out of place at all in 1994. I mean, they've always been out of place, but no one batted an eyelash at that comment in 1994, but it seems very, very, very questionable choice of words over 20 years later. But anyway, almost 20 years later. No, wait, would it be 20 years? Yeah, 25 years. 25 years later. 25 years later. I'm getting my years mixed up here. Anyway, the Sandman then took on Tommy Dreamer in a Singapore cane match. I guess the timing of this show that I watched this pay-per-view could not have been better, coming off that atrocious ending to Bray Wyatt and Seth Rollins at Sunday's Hell in the Cell pay-per-view, which ended in a no contest, referee stoppage, DQ, what have you. It was a fuck finish. We got the exact same thing here, so if you think that's a new phenomenon with WWE, I mean, granted this was ECW, but every company is guilty of doing it at one point or another, and ECW was no exception. The Sandman, with Woman in his corner, won. after Dreamer attacked the referee with a Singapore cane. Even in a match with no disqualifications, Dreamer somehow managed to get himself disqualified. Made absolutely no sense. At least they didn't waste their time with this. It went all of a minute before the match was thrown out. Dreamer attacked Sandman with the Singapore cane. He attacked Woman with the Singapore cane. He attacked the referee, like I said, with the Singapore cane, which resulted in the DQ win for Sandman. It was absolutely stupid. Dreamer walks out. Woman revived the Sandman afterward with like a ciggy or whatever, which was kind of cool, to be honest with you. I thought that was a cool spot, as dumb as it was, and that was really all this was. We then had Public Enemy taking on the Bad Breed, which consisted of Axel Rotten and Ann Rotten for the ECW World Tag Team titles. The Public Enemy were the champions coming in, and they were the champions coming out of this matchup as well. This went on for way too long. Like, for every match up to this point going all of, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I mean, granted, the Jason Mikey Whipwreck match went all of maybe 10 or 12 minutes, which was perfect because the match was good. This was not. This was pretty boring. Just kind of your basic ECW brawl. Nothing out of the ordinary about this whatsoever. Public Enemy did win with their signature drive-by finisher by pinning, I think, Axel Rotten, if I'm not mistaken, after almost 20 minutes of brawling. So again, this match did not need at all to go as long as it did. This was pretty boring in my opinion. We then had Sabu with 911 in his corner and Paul E. Dangerously taking on Too Cold Scorpio. Now, this was a great match. This match was fucking awesome. Now, not because of Sabu, and I've said this before, I think his opponents are largely responsible for making Sabu's matches as good as they were. Because if he didn't have a good dance partner to work with, his matches were shit. But this was great because Too Cold Scorpio was awesome. The match was really good. They got a ton of time to work with. This is an example of a match I would love to see more of, as opposed to Public Enemy versus the Bad Breed, which just dragged on and on and on and on. Sabu and Too Cold Scorpio is a match I can get used to seeing for a bit longer than I did. 20 minutes. And that was probably the perfect length, to be honest with you. In the end, 911 distracted the referee, and then Paulie Dangerously helped Sabu hit the Arabian Facebuster on Too Cold Scorpio to help Sabu pick up the victory. So a very good match. Enjoyed this for what it was. Largely because of Too Cold Scorpio, I guess Sabu deserves some credit. It wasn't all Too Cold Scorpio, but as I've said before, a big reason why Sabu's match as an ECW at this point, later on in his career, really at any point in his career, to be honest with you, were as good as they were, was because of who he worked with. And Too Cold Scorpio was a prime example of that. You put in the Sandman in this spot, the match would have sucked. But because Too Cold Scorpio was in there, the match was really good. And it's not a matter of, it's biased, like Too Cold Scorpio is awesome, and he is. But you watch the match, it's like night and day. If he's wrestling in like one of those hardcore brawls, sometimes they can be like a guilty pleasure. Sometimes they can be mildly entertaining. Largely, they're a goddamn mess, and they just make no sense, and they're just a mess. They're just that. But when he's in there having a good wrestling match with a guy like Too Cold Scorpio, it's really good, and I thought this was easily the best thing on this entire show. We then get to the main event, which could have been a show stealer, but was never given the opportunity to be one, between Cactus Jack and Terry Funk. So this stemmed from what happened at the last show. I think Hostile City Showdown was the last show of ECWs I reviewed about a month ago. And on that show, I think they were in opposite teams, and they teased facing off one-on-one at some point, and they faced off here on this show. And the match was, it was going well before it was just completely thrown out the window. Cactus Jack wanted to have a scientific wrestling match. That was his whole goal with this thing, to have a scientific wrestling match. Whatever the hell that means. Obviously, that was the joke, because this was anything but. They had interference. Public Enemy ran in to attack Terry Funk, because they hated Terry Funk. They tried to put Cactus Jack over Funk, and Jack was like, no way, I don't want your help. They beat the shit out of him, too. It was just a fucking mess. So then it turned into an all-out brawl, with Jack and Terry Funk teaming up against Public Enemy. Despite having issues prior to this, they found, a common enemy, no pun intended, with Public Enemy. So they went after Public Enemy, and really the most memorable part about this was not the match itself, was not the brawl between Public Enemy and Cactus Jack and Terry Funk. It was the spot that closed the show, with Terry Funk motioning for a chair from the crowd to hit Public Enemy with, and the entire crowd proceeded to just shower the ring with chairs. And I know you've seen this clip before. WWE's played it over 1,000,000 times, which is not good because it glorifies the moment. I think there's a lot of people who think this was awesome. This was, prime Attitude Era, even though it happened in 1994. Or this was prime ECW, blah, blah, blah. It was a fucking dumb thing to do. Now, obviously, this was not Terry Funk's intent. You can hear either Joey Styles or someone else get on the mic say, "Hey, please stop throwing the chairs." And then they reiterated that statement. They echoed that statement saying, "Hey, stop throwing the chairs," because it was fucking dangerous. It was a really dumb spot to do. And again, it wasn't a dumb spot. It wasn't ECW's fault. It wasn't Terry Funk's fault. It was just something that happened. It was the fans' fault, really. But they should have had better security. Why is that shit happening? I saw maybe one security guard trying to calm everyone down. But by that point, it was too late. Everyone at that point was, wanted to get in on the joke, wanted to get in on the angle, and throw their chair into the ring. And they could have killed Public Enemy. I know they were steel chairs. It wasn't like they were throwing knives or some shit. But still, that can be a really dangerous spot. They were buried within these chairs. And I don't know which Public Enemy member it was, but one of them got up from the rubble, the pile of chairs that was, covering them. They stood up. They looked like they were pissed. And I thought they were going to get on the mic. They were going to get on the mic and just bury the audience, and they didn't. They buried Cactus Jack and Terry Funk in the mic instead. So obviously that feud isn't over. I would assume the next main event of the next show that I watch will be Cactus Jack and Terry Funk versus Public Enemy. But I thought that was just a really, really dangerous spot. And maybe it's 2019 and I'm too sensitive, blah, blah, blah. But if that happened today, these people, like a riot would have ensued. Like you would never see something like that today. Largely because people wouldn't throw chairs, and a lot of people, it's not the ECW arena. I guess, they could take their, like for example, at Hell in the Cell, I'll bring this back up. At Hell in the Cell on Sunday, between Seth Rollins and Bray Wyatt, when the match was shit. I mean, that's not the reason why the fans threw their chairs into the ring here. Rollins and Wyatt, it sucked. Or at least the ending, or the entire match sucked, let's be fair. But the ending specifically sucked. The fans could have very easily thrown their chairs into the ring or at the cage, whatever. But it would have put the health and the safety of the performers at risk when it really wasn't their fault. Now, again, they would have been doing that for a completely different reason, but why do that? I know they wanted to be cool. The fans of the ECW arena wanted to be, cool and hip and whatever, edgy. I don't know. I just thought it was really stupid. So I know it's a very famous spot. Some people look back on it as one of the highlights of ECW's run for as long as it lasted. Personally, I just thought it was insanely stupid. That was probably the most memorable part of the show, unfortunately. Overall, very throwaway event. I would not suggest going out of your way to watch it. It's a very short show, hour and 48 minutes probably, so it's not a complete waste of your time. And the only real match worth going out of your way to check out is Sabu versus Too Cold Scorpio. The rest of it is really throwaway. Public Enemy versus The Bad Breed sucked. The main event never really got a chance to get going. Sandman and Tommy Dreamer made absolutely no sense. Taz and Snuka versus the Pitbulls was short and sweet, but it's not something worth seeking out. 911 and Mr. Hughes was terrible. Jason versus Mikey Whipwreck was good, but again, not good enough to warrant watching this entire show. So that is Hardcore Heaven 1994, a very controversial, I guess might be the right word to use, ending to the show. Check it out. I know you've seen the clip before, but it might be worth checking out for that last couple minutes of the event alone, to see the context behind why it happened, how it happened, the aftermath of the incident with the entire arena throwing their chairs into the ring. But again, that was Hardcore Heaven 1994. Thank you guys for checking out my review here on YouTube, here on WrestleRant. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. I have no idea when I'll be back with my next review of an ECW pay-per-view. It could be in a couple days, it could be next week, it could be in a month from now, like the last one. I don't know. These pay-per-views are not good enough that are making me want to go out of my way to watch them. But when I need content on a dead day like today, I'll watch an ECW pay-per-view, review it here for WrestleRant. And I put up this video today late, I apologize, but I put this up today because there was no new content airing after Raw last night on the network. We had the Goldberg Chronicle. My review of that is currently up now on the channel, on Network and Chill. Great episode of Chronicle, check it out. But nothing new airing after Raw. I know they replayed Chronicle with Goldberg after Raw on the network, and then they replayed the Season 9 premiere of Total Divas from the E! Network on the USA Network after Raw last week. So, speaking of which, my review of Total Divas Season 9, Episode 2, I almost said Episode 3, we're skipping ahead here. I thought that was Episode 2 for some reason, that aired last night. Season 9, Episode 2 will be up likely on Friday. I think there's something else airing on the network before the end of the week. I forgot what it is. My mind, I can't think of it right now. I said the same thing last week. I don't remember. I think there is something else airing that's new on the network in the next couple of days, and if there is, then I'll get to it over the weekend. But until then, guys, it's the Ciampa documentary. There's a new Tommaso Ciampa documentary airing on Wednesday after NXT. I probably will not watch that until later on Thursday or early Friday, and that review should be up on Saturday, so stay tuned for that as well. Anyway, guys, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.